would love to start introducing our panelists as we are talking about safeguarding. Safeguarding the users of the digital and virtual worlds is of utmost importance in today's world. As the world becomes smaller and more people spend more and more time with unreal worlds that we create with today's technology, whether the parents, educators, or community at large likes it or not, the teens and the youth of today spend far more time socially interacting within a digital or immersive environment than ever before. The next panel will feature Common Sense Media's recent VR privacy report's main author, an entrepreneur who runs VR Academy for Children, and a privacy activist moderating the panel. This panel is moderated by one of the XRSI's advisors, and hopefully we will resolve some of those technical issues to get privacy expert Nandita Narla diving into the issue from a multidisciplinary perspective. Nandita is a privacy and DEI advocate with 10 plus years of experience helping Fortune 500 companies build privacy, cybersecurity, and information governance programs. Currently, Nandita leads the privacy governance team at DoorDash, responsible for embedding privacy in products and enterprise-scale cross-functional initiatives. Nandita serves on the advisory board of XRSI, as I said, Techno Security and Digital Forensic Conference, and IAPP, Privacy Engineering. Nandita holds an MS in Information Security from Carnegie Mellon University, a Fellow of Information Privacy (FIP) designation from IAPP, and certification in the security and privacy, such as CIPP-US, CIP, CIPM, CDPSE, CISM, RISC, and CISA. Not going to go into those acronyms, but sounds fantastic. Sonal Ahuja is the CEO and co-founder of VR Academy Limited, a virtual reality platform aimed at imparting VR education to the youth and children. VR Academy is the world's first live online education platform that imparts the knowledge of developing virtual reality metaverse to children. The platform engages the youth to master creative design, digital art, filmmaking, 3D development with virtual reality. VR Academy is a world-class, inclusive digital academy focused on expanding the imagination of children globally through creative and VR education and using NFTs to empower their creativity. Sonal is also the executive director of Novatech Limited, who are a creative AAA-rated VR production house with their design studio in New Delhi. Novatech is a company specializing in artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality applications, and infrastructure. He's responsible for innovation and research and development with the company. And last but not least, Gerard Kelly is an attorney focused on privacy and legislative policy who thrives on cutting-edge legal issues and has a strong background in public policy, information technology, data ethics, emerging technologies. Gerard received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration and Management and Information Systems from University of Arizona, and a master's degree in Applied Ethics and Science and Technology Policy from Arizona State University, and a Juris Doctor degree from Santa Clara University of Law. And clearly, such a remarkable panel. I do not yet have Nandita with me to start this panel. So in the interest of time, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you, why do you think this is important to be part of this panel today? And Sonal, I want to begin with you. What inspires you to potentially prioritize safety now that you have your VR Academy? And if you go towards the crowd as you speak, we love.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm over here quite far ahead away from you in Bangkok. So it's just early morning hours, and it's so nice to be over here to start your day in the morning with some, I would say, calm meditative moments, and to think that what is it that is going to make my day great. So the academy, is Actually, not my idea. As I keep on telling all the people that I'm the co-founder of this particular platform. It's actually my child's idea. So about a few years ago, my child became very, very ill, and as a production house, we were always making new titles, something new to inspire the people in virtual or augmented experiences. And we created something with my brother as a part of our production house, for which we own the IP, called India's Journey to the Moon. And the whole idea was that could we make something which would be interactive, so that the children from developing countries could interact and see and believe. And when we made that, I showed it to my child in the hospital. So because he was quite poorly, you can imagine a child who's not well for quite a few days in the hospital. It can be quite a harrowing experience for him or her. And he just asked me, Papa. After being there, he didn't want to get out from the environment. He was so overwhelmed by just going to the moon in virtual reality, being able to do some experiments there. He asked me, Papa, can uh, I don't just want to play these games. I want to learn how you make them. So I took that challenge to my entire team, that can a 10-year-old boy or girl learn how to make their own applications in virtual reality? Not just be a user, like we are all users right now. Uh, some of them are passive users, but now we are active users because we are interacting. But can they learn how to make their own applications? That was a core question. Can they learn how to storytell in virtual reality? And it wasn't that simple. It wasn't that easy. But today we have a platform where children right from the age of 9 plus are coming online, are learning about how to create their own virtual platforms, learning how to work with the 3D elements, learning how to storytell, learning how to code, and so on and so forth. And it's really, really overwhelming and exciting to see all the young minds put their constructive hats on and use the technology to collaborate, to interact, and to create. And when we are creating such platforms, or when we are creating any tools in which people interact, things can be used or abused or misused. So for us, it became very, very important that child safeguarding is the most important element. How are we going to make sure that the environment that we are creating, or which the children create, is going to be the right one for them, where the parents could go, for example, in a very, very safe way, and say, okay, yeah, this is where I feel my child is going to be safe, and I know nobody's going to take advantage of their situation. And so many oftentimes we, when we have used various platforms, including this one, such as Allspace, which I believe is slightly better than others, uh, you know uh, we find that things are rather unregulated or uncontrolled. And wherever people meet up, there is a potential of, as I said, of people not using the platform in the right perspective, with the right perspective. So for me, the most important thing is that, yeah, it's great that we are using technology to connect and to collaborate in ways that we had never ever thought before. But as more and more people start to use it, there is a potential for, or a threat in the environment, that some people are not going to be, uh, using it in the right ethical way. And we want to make sure that, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And children know themselves, for example, that what would be classified as right and wrong behavior, to be able to report it and to be able to protect themselves. I mean to say, if you have, let's take a teenage child or a young tween child, they would be using technology, whether you like it or not. They're on their mobile phones, they're on their devices. And how do we make sure that they learn what is right, and if there's something dodgy happening around, that they can report it and connect yourself. So therefore, when we started the entire startup, this was extremely important. And this is what really makes my day, is if I could make one life better using the technology, if I could make the environment safer for the users, then I think my day is done in the right way. And at the academy, this is what we've tried to do, is give the knowledge, share the knowledge, and make sure that our young users are using it in the right way to maximize their collaborative potential. We don't want to stop them, but we want to encourage them in the right perspective way. So that's what kickstarts my day. Okay. I hope
Thank
I
you,
answered.
Sonal. And since we have Nandita back, I just quickly want to check, Nandita, you can message me directly, not to all. But let's see if we can hear your audio. Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you,
great.
and you can certainly come by me and take the position right here. And just to make it easier for you, I'm going to hand it over to Gerard in the meantime. Gerard, over to you for your presentation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sonal. That was a great presentation, and I'll be talking a little bit about a recent report from Common Sense. Could we go to the next slide, if that works? Well, great. I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Sonal was saying, that to fully understand virtual reality and all the devices and in all of the privacy and safety considerations, at Common Sense, we rate the privacy of different apps and different products. So we took a look at all the devices in the market. We took a look at all of the literature and articles and and academic research on VR. We looked at not just privacy policies, but also data flows. So we really wanted to see what is the actual state of privacy when it comes to virtual reality devices. There's a link there on the slide today if you want to read the full report. We're going to go through just a quick kind of 10-minute summary of some of the key findings. But if you go to commonsense.org, you can read the full report. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to really frame the discussion as we talk about what VR is at this moment. And I think we all know VR is going to get much, much bigger in the coming years. But I think this is a time to really reflect and think about, now that we have spaces like Allspace, we have all of these applications being used by children and teens. Now is the time to really define what privacy means, and that could come in many different ways. Some are through privacy laws, but also I think through manufacturers as they think about new devices, building in privacy, and to really, I think, think about privacy by design, different features in which when we know children are using these devices, how are we protecting children? VR devices like our headsets now are not as ubiquitous as laptops or mobile phones, but they might one day be. And so I think all the data that these devices collect, we need to think about in the context of both privacy and safety. There's been a lot of great panels here talking about safety, and that applies outside the metaverse as well. In different gaming environments, where children and teens are, exposed to harassment, this can be exacerbated in virtual reality. So I think that's something we need to, consider as well. This is also, a chance for us to define what privacy means. We have a lot of VR manufacturers who say they care about privacy, but when you read the privacy policies, when you look at what data is collected, you see that that's not always the case. So I'll dive a little bit into that research now. Next slide, please. The big takeaway from our report at Common Sense is that we cannot recommend any VR headsets for use by children or teens. And that takes a really comprehensive approach, as I mentioned. We read all the privacy policies of the most popular VR devices and most popular virtual reality apps. We have the devices themselves in our labs, where we look at the data flows to see, what data is collected, where it's being sent. And the big takeaways from the report is that the most popular VR devices, all of which I think folks here might be familiar with, the Meta Quest 2, for example, HTC Vive, Valve Index, PlayStation VR, etc. All of these devices don't meet our minimum requirements for privacy. For example, as soon as you put on these headsets, all of the data that's being collected about your body movements, what you're looking at, what you're not looking at, all of that data, is potentially, ripe for monetization. As we talk about this in VR, Allspace VR is owned by Microsoft, which is one of the companies that we evaluated for the report. All of the privacy policies for the most popular virtual reality headsets and devices were not clear, which means they don't talk about how they protect privacy of kids or students or consumers, or they explicitly say, yeah, all the data that's collected is used for commercial purposes, such as selling it, targeted advertising, for example, profiling or tracking. I mentioned privacy by design as a principle that manufacturers can think about. All of the devices, when you think about the settings, the menus, the controls, don't implement privacy by design, which means that they place the most restrictive privacy protecting settings by default. And of course, all of these different VR devices and applications are designed around an app store model. So there's third-party advertising that's going to be exposed to any user of the device. Now, some big takeaways as we talk about the intersection with children is that the policies are not written with children in mind. And so when we think about children under 13 or even teens using these products, there's not disclosures that how they're going to protect those users from other worst practices such as selling data, targeted advertising, tracking, for example. When we do see headsets that talk about kids, that talk about parents giving consent, more than half have no parental controls whatsoever. So even if you're a parent who wanted to expose your child to this device at home, or maybe an educator in a computer lab in a school, you couldn't even change those settings if you wanted to. Next slide, please. And I think the big takeaway is that all of these VR devices that we tested, they're exploiting your sensitive data, right? All of this really sensitive, intimate biometric data about how your body interacts with VR. This is a lot different, I think, than most people realize than a web browser on your laptop or a mobile device on a phone, because your body posture, what you're looking at, pupil dilation, our gestures, right, our facial expressions, even something as minute violations of blushing, for example, in VR could be captured. We look at the data flows of these devices, over 100 times a second, your body is being tracked in VR. So that means a 30-minute session, which what we're having today, that means over 2 million unique data points could potentially used to profile your unique characteristics, your unique preferences in virtual reality. In many cases, our unique body experiences are involuntary. What we look at or what we don't look at is not something that's necessarily as controllable as clicking on mouse or clicking on your mobile device. Researchers have done a lot of work in VR and how experiences can influence kids and teens and sometimes engage longer in VR. So folks might be enticed to spend even more time, and that goes to addiction, which is another issue that happens for kids and teens outside of VR, but could be exacerbated even more. I'd also like to say that all of this is emphasizing why we want VR to succeed. We see a lot of benefits here, not just for teens and children, but for consumers as well. So how can we think about baking in privacy, before these devices, become so ubiquitous? Next slide, please. And I think the big takeaway is that the industry can change. But right now, as a consumer, as a parent, as an educator, there's not a device that you can choose right now that isn't using the data that's collected about you in virtual reality for commercial purposes. But that could change right next year, right? So, as we think about, folks who already have devices, what can they take away? Right now, there's not a lot of settings and control. So even with devices that their privacy policies, and the data that's shared with data brokers, for example, there's not settings to change that. So I think really reflecting on consumer choice, freedom of decision making to turn off or turn on those settings as appropriate. As I mentioned before, even if VR manufacturers have settings, these can change all the time, right? With new software updates, with new versions, as menus move around. It's really hard for parents, for consumers, for educators to try and navigate all these changing settings that may not apply to other applications like Allspace VR that have its own individual settings, right? So not only could your data be being used by the VR manufacturer, but your data could also be used by any VR application you are using as well. And so finally, I think some of the big takeaways for VR developers and manufacturers is they need to think about new privacy practices, new policies in the context of VR, not just writing kind of generic promises of how they'll protect privacy, but not going into all the complexities that are required in this new emerging in an environment that is collecting so much more data. And I think right now is an opportunity as we think about, how to redefine privacy, what that looks like, privacy laws or new settings or new controls or new devices, really making your voices heard, talking to manufacturers, talking to VR app developers and saying, what does privacy look like? I would like to use a privacy protecting app or device. Right now, that currently is not available in the marketplace, but we would love it to be. Next slide. I think that's it. So those are the big takeaways from the report. I'd love to answer any questions on the panel, but I'm happy for you to go to commonsense.org and dig a little deeper if you like. Thank you.
Is there anybody in there?
Would you
Well,
like me to go first?
in
Oh,
my
yeah.
personal opinion or professional opinion, I must say that I think parents think that when big companies are introducing a device, that they are taking everything, they're taking all the steps that are necessary, that everything is safe and it's all good. If you look at the list of warnings that actually even the Meta Quest or Oculus Quest headset comes with, it is quite daunting. So there are many conditions, medical conditions, where you really can't use a headset. So, and let's imagine that, okay, you are medically qualified, you tick the box in that you are not having any of those predisposed challenges, so to speak, that will prohibit you from using the headset. um, Still they will not talk about the possible problems that you can have. And this is one of the big lacunae in the industry right now, that there is no regulation as such which says, okay, well, this is what you can do. There is regulation, for example, with mobile phones on the interference that they emit. And actually, to be honest, some of these headsets are nothing but a glorified mobile phone, put on right in front of your eyes, with some other tech around. So what is happening from health and safety perspective? There are big unknowns. What is happening from privacy perspective is a big unknown, and people just trust big companies to actually put all the safeguarding in place, which often never happens. So this is one of the big challenges, that can there be self-regulation? Can there be better information available, so that then the users and the parents can then make the right choice themselves? This would be great. And of course, from industry perspective, unfortunately, you know um, the job, it seems, that of police and other governing authorities is to chase the bad guys. And why should there be any bad guys? That's the key that I want to say. There could be transformation. If there are no bad guys, then there's police has got to there's no policing may not be required. You self-police yourself. So can we create a society, at least amongst the tech industry, which is not just built upon a kind of greed or money making exercises, but to be able to make sure that can we make a positive impact? That'll be great. So I think this is the key challenge. If there was information available, I'm also quite surprised as well with the, what George just said about the report, that the devices aren't really ready, and that's the key thing, that people trust that everything is ready. So there's a lot research to be done. There's a great opportunity over here for the industry leaders to think, oh yeah, look, can we be proactive in this?
and money. But Gerard, what are your thoughts on the biggest misconceptions around privacy and VR?
Yeah, I agree with both your comments. I think when we talk to parents and consumers about our report and VR in general, I think there's a big misconception that if you're not paying for for the product, you are the product. But in VR, you're paying a lot for the product, especially for expensive headsets or tethered headsets that require a personal computer and a graphics card, for example. But your data is still being monetized. I think a lot of parents and consumers think if they just check the box and say, I'm opting out of targeted ads, that means everything's fine when it comes to privacy, or maybe my device is using or app is using a child profile, for example. But those only focus on content moderation. Those only focus on age-appropriate content, not on age-appropriate privacy. So I think there's a big misconception that when folks are paying a lot of money for these devices and technologies, that their privacy is not also protected. And even the settings that are available in limited ways still don't protect their privacy.
You brought up a really good point about privacy controls or just controls in VR. I'm curious to understand, like, at least in social media, all of the studies that I've read point to the fact that people don't understand those settings. They don't really know what tracking means, what share or sell means per CPRA, or what the iOS ATT framework means. And you're being asked to make decisions or toggle some buttons without really having a full understanding of what you're agreeing to. How does that translate to the VR platform and the apps that you see today?
I would just add,
personally,
sorry, go ahead, please.
Okay, so yeah, quick point really. I would just like to say that, there is a regulation, at least in Europe, which is called GDPR. And GDPR regulations, for example, today, they really, disallow misuse of data to a very large extent. So when most of the companies which are operating inside European Union, they are regulated and governed by these general data protection rights of consumers. Okay, so that means, let's imagine that if I'm an automobile company and I got data about how you're driving, for example. Now today's cars are very intelligent. They can collect a lot of information. They just can't abuse that data and just sell it off to, for example, insurance companies. Even you may have put a tick in the box. So GDPR is probably I would say the leading legislation available anywhere in the world that can protect their consumers. And all these big tech companies, which are on the social media, if they have to operate in Europe, they have to follow those regulations. Unfortunately, there is no international, I would say, common domain which says, okay, how companies will operate, for example, when they go to India or China or Thailand or Mexico or Brazil, for example. So different countries are trying to somehow emulate these regulations of GDPR. And often you would find that the access to data becomes even more expensive if you have this tick in the box. Now, while GDPR is not just restricted to website data, it is to all digital content. For example, the content that you may have by using your smart ticket when you use the metro, and so on and so forth. It concerns all digital data. We often find that there are loopholes, especially when it comes to gaming. There is hardly any regulation. And when you come to virtual reality, there's no regulation. So what is happening really, nobody really knows. And again, therefore I say that the most active policing is self-policing. But yeah, if a template for data privacy could be adopted, where we are right now by global standards, GDPR offers great hopes. So something that we could possibly emulate in the metaverse aspect as well.
And I would add as well that when we think about what selling means, what tracking means, what targeted ads mean, you're right. These are terms that vary from state to state in the U.S., but to most point, internationally with Europe's GDPR, consumers don't know all the differences. And even here in the U.S. and California, what selling data means is going to change in 2 weeks when California's new California Privacy Rights Act comes into law. And so I think we need to change the perspective from a opt-out regime or approach we're in now, where we're asking consumers and parents and educators to figure out what all these controls mean, turn them off, turn them on for every device, every app. And I don't think that really is getting at what privacy by design means. We should have privacy for all. And I think especially in VR, when it's collecting so much biometric, sensitive, intimate data about ourselves, a lot like a health device, right? By default, right, you should have privacy. So you should be opting in to maybe for targeted advertisement or tracking or other forms of commercialization of your data, not trying to figure out how to opt out and navigate these menus, many of which are not even available for consumers or users.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I see that in like Web 2 as well. People don't really know how to navigate these, and no amount of education is ever enough to get around these. On a related note, I did want to ask, we talked about like parents and educators sort of like putting this implicit trust in these VR headsets and platforms. How do we educate them better? What concerns what red flags should they be looking at?
Okay, so again, from education perspective, and as I said, that often the industry is waiting for a big problem to happen before they find a solution. Why should I really wait for a big tragedy to happen? Let's take disappearance or kidnapping of a child, for example, before I start cleaning my the backyard around in my city. So again, from the policing perspective, for example, one of the most important things that we want to say, we want to do in terms of safeguarding is that, are the parents really aware of the content that the children are watching or they are getting involved with? And this could start from anything. This could start from, is the film appropriate, or is the game appropriate itself? And again, Europe has led the way, I would say, both for the West, towards America and towards Asia as well, to have certain ratings. We know, for example, today there's a PEGI rating. Okay, so PEGI rating applies, which is called Plan European Game Information, which applies to all games. So you just can't publish a game in Europe and say, oh, this is good for a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old and so on and so forth. So they come in different levels: 3, 7, 12, 16, and 18 rate. And you know that if I'm having a 3-year-old rating, which is 3+, that means it's universal and people can see it. If I'm having 16, then probably there's a lot of violence, and it may not be good for the mindset of the younger children. Now, such ratings always help. And of course, I think inside the Quest, the Meta Quest platform, there are ratings. In some others, there aren't any. But what would be really useful is to have this, what George was suggesting, is to have a button. Just imagine that the devices have a button that I'm giving this headset to let's take a 13-year-old girl to use, and they definitely, Meta says on the top, from the age 13+, but not everybody is strictly following. Even parents are not following that. It's recommended. So of course, some younger children may be gifted and talented and would like to use this headset, and others are older who may not be that developed, and for whom 13 or even 15 may not be right age. So perhaps, can we have a button, a toggle button, make this device child safe, for example, for 13-year-old? That will be great, and that is not too hard to implement from the software perspective, I believe. The question is, again, when you do create such a button, it'll take quite a few users away, I guess. So, but I think it could be implemented. That's a great idea. And following these PEGI ratings would also help parents take an easy decision that, yeah, this is what I can do with the metaverse, and I'm making my environment safe, and I'm doing from my side whatever is possible. But also, one thing could be useful is that okay, regulation as said, self-regulation. Maybe if we can record the core activities, and if something is going wrong, then the devices are so intelligent these days that a warning could be given, and the warning could be given even to the parents. that yeah, look out, there is something not happening right, you know. Often the biggest mistrust happens between the family itself. You'd be surprised, you know, if you look at the situation of many developing worlds where there's a lot of child abuse. It's not that some stranger has come in. This abuse may happen from somebody within the family circle or friend circle itself. And for parents is important, or for children themselves, to find out those points which make them vulnerable. And that's the key to safeguarding. And if we could do that within the devices somehow, to make sure, yeah, if suppose you know, the children are interacting with their friends or extended friend circle, you know, that they are just like you go to a party and you don't want to just knock into strangers who don't look right. Same thing is in the metaverse as well. Can we bring these flags in? And from software side, I think this is not too hard and should be done pretty easily, I guess, you know, in the next 1 to 2 years or in next few months. If the people in the industry were to put their hats on and work together, it could be done easily. And it's a great idea, creating child appropriate content.
Gerard, do you have anything to add uh, regarding like red flags to watching, like parents and educators, what red flags should they watch out for, or how do they evaluate VR for kids?
When it comes to red flags, I think parents, educators, consumers, they're all looking for, you know, for products that respect their data, that respect their choices. And so at Common Sense, we rate the privacy of different apps and games used by kids and teens and of course consumers. So when it comes to VR, I think the app stores themselves in VR, and this goes to you know, all the different, you know, stores from you know, Meta's app store to Steam VR, of course, and PlayStation VR and others, building in ratings into these, you know, into these stores, much like Apple and Google have introduced their own privacy nutrition labels, right, to bring awareness, right, about some of these privacy issues to consumers, so they can make better informed choices and know what those red flags are. I don't think most folks in this room read all the privacy policies of Allspace VR, right, before we came in here today. So I think helping folks, you know, understand what those red flags are, helping them make informed choices for themselves and their children, you know, I think can really help move the entire VR industry forward.
That's a great point on um, an app store or nutrition label equivalent for VR, something that's enforced, a universal standard that's like easy to read, like how we have nutrition labels on food packaging, something that's standardized. It's a great point. Um, One question, going back to the VR research, is what surprised you the most about the findings in privacy of VR research?
I think you said it first. You were surprised that no VR devices passed. We were looking really, really hard for a device that would pass our minimum recommendations, just a device that would, you know, disclose in its privacy policies, and then we could, you know, look at the data flows behind the scenes, that was not sharing your data with third-party, you know, trackers or data brokers, for example, that was respecting your privacy by default. None of the devices, and even some of the the most popular VR apps, we rated as well to show that the space, you know, needs to change. We were really surprised because most of the other research we do, there's always at least one company, maybe Apple or another, you know, maybe an education technology provider, which is, you know, charging a price for the software. So, you know, they don't have to, you know, think about data monetization as a way to make money. We're looking forward that, you know, as VR evolves, as the metaverse, you know, has more manufacturers, maybe Apple, maybe Google next year, you know, and it expands into AR as well. We'll see other devices from different manufacturers that I think, you know, parents and consumers, educators are looking for, really. And so that was the most surprising thing to us, is that there wasn't one device that we could really say isn't by default, you know, monetizing your data.
Sounds good. And I have the study in front of me. So, for the 7 VR devices evaluated for the audience, Microsoft HoloLens actually got the best ratings, and Pimax Vision 5K had the least privacy ratings. So, I encourage everyone to still read the report. It's very informative. I had a lot of takeaways as a privacy professional. I'm guessing everybody else will find it really interesting too. One question then for Sonal, because you have the front row seat, you're interacting with educators and kids on a daily basis with VR Academy, and I've seen some of the content that the children have created. It was hard for me to believe it was created by children. It's really good. Um, I'm just wondering, what are your observations around safety in the metaverse? What do you see in action every day that probably like manufacturers or other privacy professionals are not thinking about, but something that should be like top of mind for us?
I mean to say again, it's about as George has been talking about this knowledge sharing. There is not enough knowledge available. It's an easy thing is that when you go into a platform, for example, even like Altspace, you declare your age, and this age has to be verified. So it's not just that, okay, just imagine I'm saying that I'm 21 years old, or I'm 18 years old, or I'm 15 years old, but you verify it, and that can easily be done through, in some cases, by what you call, just like you do license verification. So if you are having some, say, talks where you think that children shouldn't be coming, and this is for, let's say, a more mature audience, you would have to verify the data itself, or through some sort of a blind double blind verification method. And the fact is that you don't want this data to be held somewhere, but just to be verified. And if that could be done, or if we know that let's take that this is a forum which is safe and appropriate for a 13-year-old, then that to be put, these labels to be put, okay, according to the age, so that regulation could be done. But another thing is that it's not about active policing through third party or in human person itself. Again, as I said, today's software is highly evolved. We can have AI driven algorithms which can check for misuse, and they can check and forewarn that what is really happening in this room. Is it a great discussion, or is it a dodgy discussion? And just like, for example, you don't want these platforms to be used for some crazy meetings as well. You can imagine from the safety perspective that, okay, these are very, very powerful platforms, and what you want is that people are using it for collaborating. So we just need to bring those set of tools from artificial intelligence, which help govern these forums or these technologies better, number one, and to have these age appropriate labels and checks in place, so that the safeguarding is done at the right level. Now, from parenting perspective, to be honest, when we go and talk to teachers, they have got no idea what metaverse really means, most of them. You would find it really hard that actually even educators understand that what it really means. Many of them, for example, if you go to show that a conference like this is happening, even though the first time I attended a conference like this was way back in 2002 with a platform called Second Life, and it looked not too dissimilar from this. So 20 years have gone from that evolutionary platform till now. The fact is that the world has woken up to the world metaverse, or what can be done with this Web 3.0, a different way to interact. The situation has been similar, and of course, Meta, the fact that they took this world seriously and rebranded the whole company to Meta helped accelerate some knowledge about what's really happening. But in this entire euphoria of, I would say, great tool and great opportunity, we must not neglect the protection issues of children. So labeling, forewarning itself, just like you rate your appliances from A to F, A being great, F being not so great. I think this is what could be done from child protection perspective as well, both from software as well as hardware perspective, and that'll make life so easy, and let the parents, educators, they all know that, look, this is in place. So if we could come up with a rating system, that'll ease out a lot of problems, I guess.
This actually is a very, very interesting point, Sonal, especially around like we have to teach the teachers to be mindful of these risks and make the right decisions for tools that they're using for children. And it's actually a good segue into the next question on what privacy solutions would we recommend to VR manufacturers and developers? I think we've already talked about some of the ideas around like toggle buttons and opt-in consent, as well as reducing some friction in some of these privacy controls. But are there other things that developers should keep in mind? Gerard, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we've talked about a couple of these already, like you mentioned. Thinking about privacy by design, so that means that the first time you're putting on a VR headset, your privacy is protected. Your data is not used for some of those other commercial purposes that we were discussing. Choosing to opt in, for example, maybe for something like third-party marketing or other targeted advertisements. Also, manufacturers and VR developers have to think about all the data that's collected in VR, how they're using it, and write appropriate privacy policies. Right now, the policies are not adequate for this new immersive environment, and all the data is collected and how it's used. So I think VR developers and manufacturers need to improve how they talk about privacy to really grow adoption and demand, and really differentiate their products on privacy that we know consumers are hungry and looking for. But I think, as you mentioned, a lot of these devices are not necessarily targeted towards kids under 13 or teens. We know, Meta and others have different, control that can help us prevent child robots, accounts, not content moderation, but stronger privacy protections for kids and teens by default. That doesn't exist right now. So I think that's a huge opportunity for VR app developers and for VR manufacturers thinking about how to build in privacy by design and privacy solutions to really, I think, sell more apps, sell more devices, grow consumer demand, and really build trust with your consumers that you're going to respect their choices, respect their data, especially when this is a emerging technology, and as you mentioned, are still developing.
That's good. I know we're nearing the end of the the time slot, and I do want to make sure the audience has enough time to ask questions. So maybe I'll just wrap this up with one question around. We talked about educating teachers, parents, adults on risks in VR, especially around privacy and security. How do we teach children about VR risks? In the physical world, we're all familiar with stranger danger and see something, say something, and we tell teens about don't share your passwords. But what are the top recommendations or ideas, and how do we teach kids about VR safety?
So again, I'll take that question because that's our everyday job, more or less. So when you talk about safety, first of all, it's about physical health and safety itself. I mean to say, wearing a headset for very long hours is just a headache. If you try to wear the current, no matter with whatever strap this headset comes with, no matter how comfy it gets, even with the new devices such as HTCs, if you're in a virtual environment for a very long time, it's a recipe for headache. So things need to be done from that perspective. First of all, that the devices become more comfortable and easier to use, so longer uses are possible. But in any case, we begin with physical health and safety education, which is very, very important. Children can't see when you are in VR, and this is something we keep on trying to tell and educate them that look, when children are working together, look, your colleague, once he or she's in VR, they can't really see you. So stay away from them, don't just go close to them because it can be dangerous. It's physical safety first. Then of course comes the other safety, such as I would say the non-physical, or say the safety of the mind itself, or for example, I would say the right term would be to call it, for example, the situational safety. And once again, if they are entering, let's say, into a space like this, in alt space, where there are avatars of other people, watch out. You can also now, I think there are tools which are available that you can close out rooms for certain ages as well. So if we are creating, let's say, content in an environment in which they're going to be teens, and you definitely don't want adults to be going there unless until they're moderating something, for example. So closeout sessions are extremely important as well. And from our perspective is, as I said, it's just making sure that common sense is really practiced every time. So when you're going into an open forum, so say for example Horizons World, I was quite surprised that for a very long time, and even now I'm not sure if it's regulated in the right way. You are mixing up people, right? Who maybe, and you do not know what their ages are. Somebody could be 80-year-old person sitting next to an 8-year-old child. How do we make sure that this does properly? So if you are using the platform, first of all, through any mechanism, we try to make sure that the parents know what apps are involved, are being downloaded. They can check and they can see what's really happening. But also from children's perspective, by giving them the knowledge that, look, guys, this is a great platform, go and use it in a collaborative way. But if you find something which is not right, please, please, please go and talk to your parents, go and talk to your teachers, and let them know. And that's the key, talking and communicating in the right methods. Often you find that uh, children who are most vulnerable, for example, are also suffering from some other health challenges such as depression, for example. So we are looking out for warnings where things can go wrong, not just in the physical world, not in the virtual world, but also in the physical world. And that's the job of a good educator, so as to make sure that it's all inclusive in the right perspective. So if we could have, again, as I said, devices which would allow us to see, okay, and monitor, okay, what was today's activities, log like that, so that the parent or educator could maybe go back and see, okay, yeah, was everything safe today? Yeah, everything looked okay. And if it is not looking okay, then having a talk is not about policing, is about having a friendly discussion, so as to make sure that, yeah, we are using, as I said, the technology in the right positive way. There's a lot to be done over here, and the tech is there for us to use. It's a great opportunity for us. All that we want to make sure is that it's safer for everybody. That's the key.
Great point, Sonal, especially on like physical safety, teaching kids about situational safety. As I believe you reiterated that the onus still relies on parents and teachers to like make the right decisions. And Gerard, if you have anything to add on how we can teach children about VR safety.
Yeah, I would just add that when we talk to kids about privacy in general, not just VR, it's usually those creepy factors is what they say that bugs them, and it's this idea that they can't be free to learn, they can't be free to express themselves. They're constantly being monitored. Their data is being used to persuade them maybe to have a favorable brand association or to like a certain content. Maybe their feeds are being filtered based on algorithms and profiles of what social networks or different apps want them to see. And so I think when we teach about kids, it's having that freedom to learn, that choice, that there's no creepy factors, right, in the technology that they use. And we see kids and teens making healthier choices, when there is an alternative. But I think right now it's kind of it's a situation where kids and teens don't have that healthier privacy protecting alternative.
Do we have any audience questions? And if not, we can just go around and just have Gerard and Sonal give what is your one call to action? What should the audience or people who will be watching the live video, what should they take away or something that they should do?
Okay, one thing very simple is that, from parents and educators, please use the technology as much as you can. Okay, that's a simple thing, but just be careful of its potential abused as well. And just make sure that, yeah, this is a great tech platform, great innovative platform. But yeah, please, can we just make sure that whatever we do is leading to protecting the people and the information, so that it is used in the right constructive method. So that is the key. And look out, talk, communicate. And for all developers is to do their job in the right ethical way. The best policing is when the police doesn't have to police. And the best safeguarding is that when everything is put in the right perspective and it's being used properly. So we know that there are people who will not use them in the right way. Let's just make sure that as a community we've done things in the right method, making sure that our physical and digital environment is safe to be used for everybody. That's the key thing. Talk and communicate. That's the key.
Thank you.
And Nandita, it seems like we have one question.
Oh, I believe Ryan has a question. Ryan, feel free to ask your question.
And Ryan, you should be able to talk now. Unmute. Oh. Unfortunately, there has been this bug, Nandita. So we are literally 1 minute left to time. I guess any final thoughts, and then we call it.
Oh, I'd just like to thank both the panelists. I learned a lot from this session, and there's a lot of takeaways for as a privacy professional on what manufacturers or developers, as also as product folks need to do. There's a lot to be done to enhance privacy and safety. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great evening, a great morning, wherever in the world you are. It was nice to see everybody digitally. And I wish that we can all use this great tech platform with a lot of responsibility and care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nandita, Gerard. And we will continue our shift.
Hi everyone, I'm Valentino Megale, lead of the Child Safety Initiative. Welcome again at day 3 of the Metaverse Safety Week. Metaverse technologies are rapidly growing in the consumer market, expanding audiences, demographics, and including young people. We believe children can explore these immersive worlds and enjoy their many benefits as long as they have consistent safety, security, and privacy measures in place to safeguard their experiences and keep them positive and edifying. To reach this goal, the new iteration of the internet needs a unified framework for child safety. So 30 years of online safety have taught us much about the harms and the risks that can exist online. And we have a sense of urgency to take the lessons learned from the current iteration of the internet and address these issues proactively. We have seen how manipulative ads, trolls, predators, and a lack of accountability create the opportunity for behaviors that target children, and fuel real-life crimes such as bullying, violence, child pornography, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So technology providers, parents, educators, and all the other stakeholders, we all have a shared responsibility to safeguard the young generations from the risks we can anticipate, each of which materializing can have a negative long-term impact considering the native vulnerabilities of this age group. Privacy, security, and autonomy are critical for building a child's sense of identity and self. Creating our commitment to develop standards, awareness programs, research, and innovation specially designed to safeguard children so that they have fair freedom of expression, social connection, and access to the potentials of digital technology, such as learning new skills and exploring their interests, virtual classes and training through educational platforms, the joy of learning and experiencing things in a 3D world, even before traveling, stimulating their curiosity and helping them to better understand how complex and diverse is the world around them. And also accessing healthcare solutions, such as improving outcomes of rehabilitation therapies or supporting their precious mental health. So creating a collaborative child safety framework will uphold the safety of children and benefit both government and industry in the following ways. Understanding and quantifying the long-term cognitive, emotional, physical, and social risks that come with immersive technologies and experiences. Introducing a pathway of accountability, also reducing taxpayer liability by anticipating risks, providing evidence-based solutions, supporting organizational success. So your voice is needed and valued as we collaborate to research, develop, and apply standards that will ensure the well-being of children worldwide. Help us be the first line of defense against the risk children will face when using metaverse platforms and technologies by developing a unified framework. So together we can build an inclusive, safe, and healthy metaverse where children will be free to participate and become the next generation of creators and leaders. So please reach out to us at info.xrsi.org to help us spearhead this groundbreaking initiative. Thank you and enjoy day 3.
As Valentino said, as a leader and stakeholder in this sphere, your voice is needed and valued as we collaborate to develop a child safety framework for the metaverse. We're currently in the scoping and research stage of this initiative and will be launching working groups in early 2023. So it is the perfect time to get involved and be part of this amazing effort. Please reach out to us at info@xrsi.org and indicate your interest in the child safety efforts. And now we will take 5 minutes break, but before I go to the break, I just want to thank today's supporters, of course, the Child Safety Initiative by XRSI, Alana, an organization from Global South, Child Safety, Child Online Africa, another global organization supporting children's safety, and last but not least, our key supporter for a long time now, this second year in a row, we have a support from online safety supporter, eSafety Commissioner of Australia. And so let's take a 5 minutes break, and then we will resume with our closing keynote address with Online Safety Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant.